Hey Potters! All right, I am going to show you how to throw vases in bottles. And there's gonna be a lot of new knowledge like spiral wedging, using a bat pins, choking, cutting the rim off, so much new knowledge to learn. So let's go. When we learned how to do cylinders, you learned how to wedge using ram's head. So a technique where you're wrapping the clay around like this. It works really nicely for kind of softball sized pieces of clay. So spiral wedging looks like this. And what happens is really this hand is the dominant hand. It's just kind of rolling that clay. So like a curve going up to your left, okay? This hand is just controlling it. It goes up on its tip. So up on its tip, roll it down to its left. Up on its tip, roll it down to its left. And this is a great way to wedge larger amounts of clay. I also think it's easier on your wrists. So I don't know if you can see this. What's happening is this clay is wrapping around itself in a spiral, and it looks kind of like a cone. So here we go. All right, I'm at my wheel, getting set up. Let's talk bats, not the kinds with wings. These are bats. This is what a potter puts on the wheel head. So when you throw a piece, you can just take this whole bat off and set it aside, so you're not having to remove a delicate piece from the wheel and get it messed up. Now, we use these bats for the most part. These are speedball bats. I really like them because they don't warp. So even though you can only use one side, they last much longer. All right, you guys, so on your wheel, you are going to have bat pins, or actually you're gonna put bat pins in. These have been in for a while. Let's see if I can get them out. I find that if getting it a little bit wet helps. So this is what a bat pin looks like. You've got your bolt and then your wing nut, okay? So these go in these little holes, if you've ever noticed, on your wheel. Again, when you first put them in, dip them in water. Just in case there's crusted clay on there, it will help loosen it up. So I'm gonna take the wing nut and put it underneath. Depending on what works best for you, sometimes you can hold the wing nut and screw the bolt in as far as you can. It's a little easier to have movement up here than it is down there. There's not a lot of space. And then once I get it pretty close, I go ahead and tighten that underneath the wheel with the wing nut. You need to check to make sure these don't move, okay? So I have one on each side, and you're checking them so they don't move. Also, I pulled apart the splash pan so I could get underneath to the wing nut more easily. Okay, next up, you wanna make sure that your wheel head, this is your wheel head, is clean. Because if you have any chunks of clay, it could mess up the balance of your bat. So I'm just gonna make sure that this is all clean. And then you also wanna check your bat to make sure that your bat's clean, especially down here on the bottom. You don't want any big chunks of clay, because imagine if you had a big chunk of clay, pretend like the sponge is a chunk of clay exaggerated, and you put this on, when you spin your wheel, your pot or your bat is going to wobble, okay? So make sure that both areas are clean. On these speedball bats, there is like 3 little notches right here. There's also one with 1 little notch, that's for a different type of wheel. For our studio, we use the Shimpo Whisper, and the 3 little knobs is what works for us. So I like to line up my bats or my bat pins straight with my body, and then I find the holes underneath here and I put it on. It takes some finessing, okay? So I know it's on when it's totally secure and not moving. Now, these bats don't really warp, but if you're using other bats in your studio, you wanna make sure your bat isn't warped. So how I do that is I kind of do this and make sure it's not rocking back and forth. I turn it and do it this. I do it this way, and I do it this way, okay? Just to make sure that it is not warped. All right, next up, let's talk about that clay that you wedged up. So when you're using any type of clay, even if you do ram's head and you put it in a ball and then you set it on the table, or if you do spiral wedging and you end up with a cone with kind of a flat bottom, you always want to pound it in so that it is round on the bottom. Even if this is a ball, we need this to be round, because let me explain this. If it was flat, if this was flat and you put it on the wheel, it quite possibly could trap a piece of air or air bubble underneath here, making it really hard or impossible to center. So you always want to start with a round bottom. That way, when you slam it down, that first point goes and then the rest of the clay comes down, avoiding an air bubble. All right, here we go. So here's my clay. I'm gonna pop it down. This is not a gentle thing. You wanna firmly plop this or throw this down on your wheel as close to the middle as you can. I like to give it a pat. Don't pat it so much that it flattens it out. I'm gonna add a little bit of water. I'm gonna get in centering position where my elbow is in my hip. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times, are you throwing and or trying to get it centered and your ball just goes off the wheel? Here's a trick for you. Take this finger and kind of get rid of this crease right there. See that? That will help make sure that your clay is attached to your wheel. All right, so now it's safe to go into centering. So my wheel is going full speed. I'm applying pressure with this hand. It's actually not my hand that's doing the work. It's the heel of my hand right here. So your power is coming from your body or your hip, down your bone, and out the heel of your hand towards the center. Another issue people have is pushing too much, and then you push it off center. This hand is to just kind of keep it in that dome shape. Some people use this technique. Some people do the karate chop technique. Whatever you do, don't make any sudden movements, because your clay could be centered and then you let go really fast. Look at what happened. It was totally centered. I let go really fast. Now it's off center. So once you get your pot centered or your clay centered, you want to slowly snake away. All right, on to the center hole. Now, if you have not watched how to throw a cylinder playlist, you should definitely do that before you watch this video, because we're skipping some of the basics here, but this is centering or putting your center hole in. I like to put my center hole in at an angle. A lot of times you'll see potters, if this was your clay, put their center hole in straight, and then their finger kind of gets caught and then they have to pop it out, which can get you off center. But also you can't see the bottom when you do that. So by putting your center hole in with your finger at an angle, okay, so this is what it looks like from my side, it opens it up, so now I can see how close to the bottom I am. I want about a pinky's go down about a pinky's thickness from the bottom. So there's my center hole. Depending on, you can put 1 or 2 fingers, and I'm gonna pull that floor back. Now, you wanna be supporting the other side of your pot while you're pulling the floor back. So this hand is here, and it's moving with that inside hand, but I'm really applying the pressure to this heel of the hand. If you were just to pull it back like this, there's nothing to support it here, and it's gonna get off center, and your goal is to stay on center through the whole process. So again, going full speed. I know it seems scary, but actually it's much easier if you're going full speed. So going full speed and opening that up. All right, I want to give you a little different view here, because once I pull that floor, you want to take your sponge, still going full speed, and smooth out that bottom. You must have a flat bottom here, otherwise it will dry unevenly and crack. And not only a flat bottom, but I like for people to have a 90-degree angle right here. So what I do is I take my finger like so and kind of press it down there in the corner So I have a nice 90-degree angle. All right, so we're looking for flat bottom. This also helps you compress the clay so you can avoid S-cracks. Getting that 90-degree angle. Don't make a canal there. You don't want to press so hard that you're making like an indent, but you want that 90-degree angle. And now we're going to go to throwing. So this whole time we've been going full speed. Now that we're going to pull the walls, we're going to switch our anchor to our right side and our hands to our right side. Your fingers should be at 3 o'clock, okay? You might have to look at a clock because I know we're not used to that, but we got 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. If you keep your arms back towards your body, you won't end up here, okay? So pretend like your elbows are glued to your sides. You're gonna apply pressure. Now here, the outside fingertip is a smidge below the inside fingertip. They are not right next to each other. The outside is a smidge below the inside. So this is what it looks like as I'm pulling it up. And these hands are moving up together. They have to move up together. A lot of times I see students moving one hand up or the other hand up. They have to work as one unit. I like people to try to throw the majority of their pot in 3 pulls. So that was my first pull. I'm going to try to get a little bit more aggressive with this pull. I'm pushing in here at the bottom. Notice how I don't have a skirt here, because first I'm pushing in and then I'm bringing the clay up. As I'm doing that, I'm also applying pressure here. If I were to only apply pressure here, the clay in here would come out in the inside, but I'm applying pressure on the outside and then bringing that clay up. When you get to the top, do not go off the top. Stay here, let it go around 3 times or so, and then slowly come out. Do not go off the top. So that was my 3rd pull. Also, we're working on vases and bottles. So I want you to start with the cylinders. See how tall you can get this cylinder. Again, pushing down at the bottom on the inside and outside. That helps get rid of that weight. And bring your fingertips up. All the way to the top. Let it go around a few times and then come out. Okay, a couple things you want to pay attention to when you're throwing is to keep your wheel head clean. So with a squeezed out sponge, soak up any water there. Every time you pull the wall, get your clay wet. So I have a little bit of water, not a ton of water, a little bit of water in my sponge. I put this part of my hand right here on the rim, supporting it over here, squeezing that water, and what happens is it can go inside and outside since you're resting this very gently on the top, okay? So I'm gonna do one more pull here. Now, it's common for pots or potters when they're trying to throw a cylinder for it to come out. You really want to be aware of that and mindful of that so that as you're coming up, you can try to keep this under control, keep this coming in. What we want to focus on is even walls. A lot of times the pots are thicker down here and thinner up here, and then it gets really hard to do this next step. But if your walls are even, this next step should go pretty smoothly. Now, I have some water in the bottom of my pot. I want to get that water out of the pot. If you leave water on the inside of your pot, you will probably get cracks in the bottom once it dries. All right, now I'm going to go to shaping. So again, I'm going to put water on the outside. This is how I like to put water on the outside. I cup my hand like this, and this part of my hand is touching the pot, and then I put water there, okay? Because what I'm trying to do is avoid putting water on the inside. Remember, we just got rid of that water on the inside. And now comes to choking. Some people call this collaring. I was taught that it's called choking, so we're going to choke the pot. So I don't want to choke it a ton, okay? So what I'm doing is with my fingers like this, really my hands like this, I'm applying pressure where I want it to come in. Common mistake is people go to one spot and they just go whoosh in one spot. You actually want to start where your pot is and then gradually choke and then come up. So I'm gonna gradually choke this and bring it up to the top. Do you see how I flip my finger over here? Give that a shot if you can, or when you get to the position where you can. It kind of helps keep the rim under control. Okay, so I've choked this a little bit, but I can still get my hand in here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back in here and I want to belly this out. Now when we belly this out, we're going to start with the outside fingertips underneath the inside fingertips, okay? So I'm going to come up. Here I'm going to transition and my inside fingertips are now below so I can push that belly out. See that? And then now I don't want the belly to go. I want to go back to cylinder mode. So I'm transitioning back to my fingertips, inside fingertips being on top. Okay? So I started with my outside fingertips below, and then I transitioned and pushed that belly out. So now my inside fingertips are below, and then I wanted to neck collar back in, and so I go back to this position all the way up. Okay, so I know that doesn't look like a really big belly right now, but in the end, it will really pop. I think that beginners often try to go for like a 9-month pregnant belly, okay, when really we're looking for like maybe a 5-month pregnant belly, okay, because in the end, it will look more like the 9-month, but don't have it look like the 9-month now. Okay, so again, I made sure the water was out of the inside. I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to choke this again. Remember, I'm gradually choking it, and then I get to where I want to be and I come straight up. And this is done in like medium speed. Now, here's a huge rule. Whenever you choke a pot, you have to throw where you choked it. So I'm going back in here, and I'm gonna throw where I choked it, okay? Don't apply a lot of pressure there, just a little bit of pressure, because as you're choking your pot, so your pot's like this and you choke it, the clay is getting thicker, okay? So you wanna come back in and throw just the part that you choked. Now again, I only want water on the outside, so I'm cupping my hand, putting water in the palm of my hand, and I'm gonna go choke it again. Where I choke it, I then want to make sure I throw, don't get too thin here, but I want to throw where I choked it. Okay, often when you are doing bottles or choking, your rim will get uneven. You can see how mine's a little bit uneven. This is the next step, and I'm going to try to do this over here so you can see it better. Normally you do this at 6 o'clock. I'm supporting my rim with my pincher fingers, okay? So I'm supporting the rim with my pincher fingers, and I'm making sure I have some slip on there. And then I'm going to hold this really tight, okay? No like dainty stuff. Hold it really tight. And I'm supporting it on my thumb. And I'm going to go in a little bit below my lowest point and gradually put that needle tool in. So gradually as you're going medium speed until it touches this finger, and then you can pop it right off. I'm going to show you what it looks like one more time. Gradually going in, touching the other finger, pops right off. All right, now we do not want to leave our rim looking like this. It's sharp edges, it'll crack, it'll chip. It's not a good way to leave it. So I'm taking my pincher finger, supporting my rim, and going over it with my sponge. All right, another thing you can do if you want to smooth things out is you can support it here at the rim. Curve this is a metal rib. I like to do this to smooth out my surface. I also like to do it to get rid of the slip, but it can also help with your curves. There we go. Now, here's the part where the belly pops. So I'm taking my wooden knife. This is called trimming on the wheel, trimming a vase. Ideally, you should not have to trim, in my opinion, a vase after it's been taken off the wheel. I like to get my knife wet, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start up here, kind of above this little skirt area, and I'm gonna gradually push the tip of that tool in, drawing a curve. Again, I'm holding on to this tool. You can see my knuckles are really tense. Then you're going to take your metal knife, cut it like a cake, hold it flat and go underneath. So now you can see how that belly is popping out, and look at all the weight that we got rid of. It's always a potter's goal to not have bottom heavy pots. I'm gonna go over this one more time. You can do this as many times as you want to. I like to try to take it to the extreme. So I'm gonna take a little bit more clay off there. Again, I'm looking at that curve. I want a nice, beautiful curve. A lot of times this is a step that gets skipped, and so your pots kind of look really heavy and dumpy. I like to refer to these pots as being tall and proud, okay? So I'm just getting some extra clay off, and then you still wanna do an undercut. If you haven't watched the video on how to do an undercut, you should go to the cylinders playlist and check that out. So I'm holding this tool at a 90 or 45-degree angle. I like to put the tip down. Again, I'm holding this really tight. Put the tip down really close to that base, and then quickly I'm gonna go in and hold. If you don't go in quickly, the clay just pushes up into the pot instead of cutting away. So here we go. Quickly and hold. So see how that clay comes off? Again, we're adding or getting rid of a little bit more weight, but now we've added this undercut. And what the undercut does is it casts a shadow so that your pot looks even lighter and more appealing. I kind of think it's like putting high heels on. You feel a little peppier when you put some high heels on. So that's what undercutting does for a pot. And now that we have the bat, my bat's off, but pretend it's not. I'm gonna clean up my bat one more time. And then you can just take your bat off the wheel, set it aside, get a new bat, and go again.